All right, let's learn how to solve system of equations in three variables using the reduced row echelon form. Here's how we're going to tackle this topic. We're going to review what the reduced row echelon form of a 3 by 3 matrix is, and then we're going to take a look at steps that you should follow when you're trying to solve a system of equations in three variables using the reduced row echelon form, and then we're going to try to apply the steps that we cover to some examples that are provided. So what is the reduced row echelon form of a 3 by 3 matrix? So it's a 3 by 3, so we're looking at 3 rows and 3 columns. So let's go ahead and try to deduce what that would be. So a matrix is in reduced row echelon form if it satisfies the following conditions. The first number on the first row is 1. The second number on the second row is 1. And the third number on the third row is 1. Every other number is a 0. So that's what this really looks like. So we have a reduced row echelon form, and this is an example here of what it looks like. So now the thing is, how do we go ahead and use the reduced row echelon form to solve a system of equations in three variables? The first thing we're going to do is to express that system as an augmented matrix. And then we will write the desired reduced row echelon form of the matrix using the elimination method of solving systems. We will transform the augmented matrix to its reduced row echelon form. So let's see what all of this means when we have some examples. So here's our first example. Solve the system of equations below using the reduced row echelon form. So like I said, I'm going to start off by showing you what the matrix should look like when we're done. We should have something that looks like this: 1, 1, 1, and then we have zeros everywhere else. Okay, so we're going to start by writing this in the augmented form first. So let's go ahead and do that. So we have -1, -5, -5, and then we have our vertical line here, 2. Second one, we have 4. We have -5. We have 4 here again, and then we have 19. The third row, we have 1, 5, -1, and then -20. So here's our goal. We're trying to get to this format right here. So the first thing I'm going to do is we'll go ahead and say row 2, because I want to make this a 0. I'm going to try to deal with the ones on the left hand side of the ones first before I go to the right hand side. So I'm going to start with this 4 over here. So what do I need to do? I'm going to say row 2 is equal to row 2 plus 4 multiplied by row 1. So let's go ahead and simplify that. So because we're dealing with row 2, we're going to just go ahead and leave row 1 the way it is. -1, -5, -5, and then we have 2. We go ahead and leave row 3 the way it is as well. 1, 5, -1, and then we have -20. So now what we're looking for here is row 2 is equal to row 2 plus 4 row 1. So for row 1, let me just do some work here. Row 2, we have 4, -5, we have 4, and then we have 19. For row 1 is -4, and then we have -20, -20, and then we have 8. So we're going to add this up. So here we have 0, -5 plus -20, so -25. 4 plus -20, that's -16. And then 19 plus 8, we have 27. So the next thing we're going to do is to make this right here a 0. So we're going to go row 3 is equal to row 1 plus row 3. So we're going to go ahead and draw our rows 1 and 2, since row 3 is what we're adjusting. So we have -1, -5, -5, and then vertical line, we have 2. And then we have 0, -25, -16, and then we have 27. Now we'll go ahead and add rows 1 and 3 together. So -1 plus 1, we have 0. -5 plus 5, we have 0. -5 plus -1, we have -6. And then we have 2 plus -20, we have -18. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to say row 3 is equal to row 3 divided by -6. So let's go ahead and simplify that. So rows 1 and 2 stay the same. -1, -5, -5, and then we have 2. Let's draw a vertical line here. And then we have 0, -25, -16, and then we have 27. Then we have 0, 0, 1, and then 3. So you can see here that we've made some progress on these zeros on the left-hand side. So now let's go to the right-hand side. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to focus on this -16 first. So how do I get to -16? So what I can do here is I can say row 2 is equal to row 2 plus 16 row 3. Okay, so we'll go ahead and, so we're changing row 2 only. So we'll go ahead and put in the values for rows 1 and 3. So row 1, we have 1, -5, -5, and then we have 2. Then we have 0, 0, 1, and then we have 3 over here. And now we're adding row 1. We're actually adding row 2 and 16 row 3. So row 2, let's do some work here. Row 2 is 0, -25, -16, 27. 16 row 3 is 0, 0, 16. And then we have 48. So now we're going to add this up. So we have 0 here. We have -25, we have 0, and 27 plus 48, we have 75. So now we're going to go ahead and say row 2 is equal to row 2 divided by -25. So let's go ahead and just plug in our rows 1 and 3. So 1, -5, -5, and then we have 2, and then we have 0, 1, 0, and then we have -3, and then we have 0, 0, 1, and then we have 3. So the next thing we're going to do here is we're going to deal with this right here, -5 over here. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to say row 1 is equal to row 1 plus 5 row 2. So what we're going to do here now is we're going to create, so row 1 plus 5 row 2. So let's go ahead and draw out our rows 2 and 3. So row 2 is 0, 1, 0, and then we have -3, 0, 0, 1, and then we have 3. And so now we want to have row 1 equal to row 1 plus 5 row 2. So let's draw out row 1. So we have 1, -5, -5, 2. 5 row 2, we have 0, 5, 0, negative 15. So now let's go ahead and simplify this. So we're going to have 1 here, we have 0 here, we have negative 5, and then we have negative 13. So now we need to get rid of this negative 5 on the first row, and the best way to do that is to say row 1 equal to row 1 plus 5 row 3. So we're going to go ahead and plug in our rows 2 and 3. Row 2 is 0, 1, 0, and then we have negative 3. Row 3 is 0, 0, 1, and then we have 3. And now let's go ahead and figure out what row 1 and 5 row 3 will be. So row 1 is 0, so 1, 0, negative 5, negative 13. And then 5 row 3 is 0, 0, 5, and then we have 15. So we add this up, we have 1, 0, 0, and then we have 2. So what we now have is x equal to 2, y equal to negative 3, and z equal to 3. So let's see how that works with our original equation. So we have negative x, so negative 2 minus 5y minus 5z. So this is going to be negative 2 plus 15 minus 15, and so this is negative 2 plus 15 minus 15, so that is supposed to be negative 2. So let's see, this is one of the challenges with doing this row echelon form. You have to just make sure that you don't have any errors at any point. So let's see. 1, 0, negative 5, negative 13. So let's see where the error could have been. 1, 0, negative 5. So we're adding 5 row 3. Oh, so here's the mistake. There's a mistake here. The mistake is this one here, it should have been negative 1, and I forgot to carry the negative all the way through. So that makes a lot of sense. So it should be negative 1 here. And so just watch out for that. Make sure that you're following through with your work. And so what we're going to do now is we're going to make some additional, we're going to do an additional step to make this correct. So what we're going to do now is we're going to say row 1 multiplied by negative 1. So that way we have 1 here, and because we need to have 1 as the first, we need to have it as the first term in the first row and the first column. So we're going to have 1, 0, 0, negative 2, 0, 1, 0, negative 3, and 0, 0, 1, 3. So my hunch is something could be off because we used this quite a bit. Actually, we should be fine. So let's go ahead and test these values. So we have the system is the solution to the system is going to be negative 2, negative 3, 3. So let's go ahead and test a few things here. We have negative 2, negative 3, and 3. So this is going to be right. So negative 2, negative 3, 3. We got that one correct already. So let's try this second one here. negative 2, so that is going to be negative 8, negative 3, that is going to be 15, and then 3, so this is going to be 19, correct. Negative 2, negative 3, 3, negative 20. So this is correct. So you can see here, you just have to watch out for all your steps. Make sure you're following through as you walk through the problem. Okay, so let's go to the next question. So let's go ahead and draw what our matrix is going to look like at the end. 1, 1, 1, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0. So that's what we're aiming for. Okay, so let's start with our augmented matrix. So we have negative 4, negative 5, negative 1, and then we have 18 over here. We have negative 2, negative 5, negative 2, and then we have 12, and then we have negative 2, 5, 2, and then we have 4. All right, so the first thing we're going to do is look for a way to get rid of this one right here. We're going to get rid of that one. That's the first thing we're going to go after. So we're going to say row 2 is equal to row 2 minus row 3. Let's do that. So row 2 minus row 3, we're dealing with row 2 first. So let's go ahead and figure out, let's plug in our values for row 1. Negative 4, negative 5, negative 1, and then we have 18. Let's skip row 2. Let's go to row 3. Negative 2, 5, 2, and then we have 4. Okay, now let's go ahead and figure out row 2 is row 2 minus row 3. So negative 2. Okay, let's go with row 2. Row 2 is negative 2, negative 5, negative 2, and then minus row 3 is going to be 2, negative 5, negative 2, and then here we have 12, here we have negative 4. So we have, add this up, so you have 0 here, we have negative 10 here, we have negative 4, and then we have 8. So the next one we're going to go after is negative 2 here. So what we're going to do now is we're going to say row 3 is equal to row 1 minus 2 row 3. So let's go ahead and figure out row 1 and row 2. Let's plug them in. Negative 4, negative 5, negative 1, and then we have 18. We have 0, negative 10, negative 4, and then we have 8. Okay, so let's go ahead and row 1 is negative 4, negative 5, negative 1, 18, minus 2, row 3. So we're going to multiply row 3 by negative 2. So we have 4, we have negative 10, negative 4, and then we have negative 8. So let's add this up. We have 0 here, negative 15, negative 5, and 10. So the next thing we're going to do now is we're going to figure out how to get rid of this 15 from this negative 15 here, because we need only a value right here. So what we're going to do here, we have a few choices, but we could divide everything through by 5, but that's okay. We don't it won't make much of a difference to what we're going to do next. So what we can do here is we can say row 3 is equal to 3 row 1, or let's say negative 3 row 1 plus row 3. So let's go ahead and plug in our rows 1 and 2. Row 1 is -4, -5, -1, and then we have 18. Then we have 0, -10, -4, we have 8. So -3 row 1 is going to be 12 here, 15, 3, -54. And then row 3 we have 0, -15, -15. And then we have, is that row 3? No, that's -5. So here we have -5, and then we have 10. So what we have here is, we're saying -3 row 1 plus row 3. Okay, so this is going to give us, actually, we're not going to do that. We're going to go with it. We're going to take a different approach, because if we use row 1 in anything, it's going to bring back a value to this column over here. So we're going to stay away from that and just use rows 2 and 3, because you have zeros on the first column. So those are some of the things that you always have to watch out for when you're dealing with this type of matrices. So row 3 is going to be equal to, let's go with -3 row 2 plus 2 row 3. Let's do that instead. So -3 row 2, let's go with that. So we have 0 here, we have 30, we have 12, and then we have -24. And then 2 row 3, we have 0, we have 30, we have, sorry, this is -30, this is -10, and this is 20. So now when we add this up, we have 0, we have 0, and then we have 2 here, and here we have -4. So now we're going to go row 3 divided by 2. So now we're going to end up with 4, which is -4 here, -5, -1, and then we have 18. Then we have 0, -10, -4, 8, and then we have 0, 0, 1, -2. So now we have the zeros on the left-hand side. Now let's go ahead and start working our way through the ones on the right-hand side. So what I'm going to do here with this, you can see one of the tips that you have to think about is make sure that when you do your elimination, you're not introducing a number where you already have a 0. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to work with these two. So I'm going to say here, row 2, because what I need to do is, this is the one I'm really interested in removing. I'm not going to change this because that's important to have a number there. A non-zero number there. So here we're going to go here and say row 2. Row 2 is equal to row 2 plus 4 row 1. So let's go ahead and plug in our rows 1 and 3, -4, -5, -1, and then we have 18. And then row 2 is the one we're trying to adjust. So we have 0, 0, 1, -2. So row 2 is 0, -10, -4, 8. For row 3, let's write that properly. For row 3 is 0, 0, 4, -8. So let's go ahead and add this. We're going to end up with 0, -10. We have 0. And then we have 0 here. And then the next thing we're going to do after that is we're going to deal with, let's go ahead and remove this one, -5 over here. Let's go ahead and deal with that. So we're going to say row 1 equal to -2 row 1 plus row 2. Okay, so we're dealing with just row 1. So let's go ahead and plug in the values for rows 2 and 3. We have 0, -10, 0, and then we have 0 here, 0, 0, 1, -2. Okay, so -2 row 1 is going to be 8, 10, 2, -36. Let's get rid of this to avoid confusion. And then row 2 is 0, -10, 0, and then we have 0 here as well. So let's add this up. We have 8, 0, 2, -36. And so the next thing we're going to do here is to go ahead and we're trying to eliminate these 2 over here. So I'm going to use row 1 equal to row 1 minus 2 row 3. So let's go ahead and write as rows 2 and 3. Rows 2 and 3. So row 2 is 0, -10, 0, and then we have 0 here. Row 3 is 0, 0, 1, -2. And so now let's go with row 1 is 8, 0, 2, -36. -2 row 3 is 0, 0, -2, and then 4. So what you now have here is 8, 0, 0, and then we have -32. So now we're going to go ahead and I'm going to do quite a few of them at the same time. I'm going to say row 1 divided by 8. I'm going to also say row 2 divided by -10. That's all that we have left to get our reduced echelon form. So we have 1, 0, 0, and then we have -4. We have 0, 1, 0, and then we have 0 here, and then we have 0, 0, 1, and then we're going to have -2 right here. So our system is going to be something that looks like this: x equal to -4, y equal to 0, and then z equal to -2. So now let's check how it works with the equations that we have. So we have -4, 16. This is going to be 16, 0 plus 2. That's fine. -4, we have 8 plus 4. Fine. This -4, we have 8 plus 8 plus 0, which is 8, minus 4, which is 4. So this is exactly how you want to solve a system of equations in 3 variables using the reduced row echelon form. So a few things before we end this lesson. This method is very error prone, as you can see. You have to be extremely careful as you're working through it and make sure that you do not do as much as possible. As you can see what I do, I'm showing exactly what I'm working through. So when I'm doing the elimination, I'm showing you exactly what is happening. So it's easy for me to spot any errors if there are any errors. So these are just some best practices that I will suggest and recommend that you use whenever you are working on problems that require the reduced row echelon form.